I'm Linda Magistris, and I'm Chief Executive and Founder of the Good Grief Trust. And we've got Emma Foster online who helps me on a daily basis. She's fantastic, and she manages all our NHS relationships. So any questions you've got later after the call, please do come back to Emma and she'll be able to help you. Emma's also here to manage the chat. So during the slides, please do put in the chat whatever you've got, and we'll come back to that later again after the slides. So we'll have plenty of time. We've got an hour for the Q&A later. We can do that after I've done the presentation. So I will start sharing the slides now. And we say grief can be complicated, but access to support should never be. And that's really key. And that's the thread that runs through this presentation and basically the charity. So our story, this was my partner, Graham. He died sadly of a soft tissue sarcoma back in 2014. And I really struggled at the time. I actually lost my father 24 years ago this year. But losing Graham was something different. And again, that's incredibly important to recognise, which I never did, that each bereavement can be completely different for each person. It depends on the relationship that you've had with them and the stage in your life where you are as to that impact. So when Graham died, as I said, I really struggled. So I went off to see the GP. I asked for help. I'd never been to counselling, but he offered counselling. He had one leaflet for Cruise, which everybody knows is a big national charity. Sadly, they didn't have anything available for about 6 to 8 months. And at that point, I really couldn't even wait 6 to 8 hours. So I lied. I had a friend who lived in a neighbouring borough in London, in Kensington, and I'd heard that they had some counselling there. So I just gave her address. I was absolutely desperate. So I went along. I sat, there was a box of tissues, there was a clock and a very nice lady. And I sat through 4 sessions and I just cried my way through it and went back to the GP and I just said, look, I'm really sorry. This just isn't working for me. I can't find a way forward. What else have you got? Sadly, the only thing he could offer was sleeping tablets or antidepressants. And for me personally, I don't even take a paracetamol. Medication doesn't work for me. So that was it. The door was shut. So I went out and I Googled and I found an incredible charity called Widowed and Young. They were specifically for those people who had lost a partner under 50. I went back to the charity, back to the GP, and I said, look, this is an amazing charity. I actually became London coordinator for them. And I said, why didn't you tell me about them? And he said he'd never heard of them. And that was pretty much my light bulb moment. I realised there was a lack of awareness around the breadth of local and national bereavement services. There was a lack of one central national online hard copy resource for healthcare providers. And there was a lack of early signposting the bereaved to a choice of immediate tailored support from day one. So I piggybacked on a programme called Building for the Best. It was a programme run by the National Council for Palliative Care. I visited 10 bereavement teams across the UK. I spoke to them. I talked to them about the type of support that they could offer. It was reasonably limited. They had booklets, they had leaflets, they had brochures, all completely different. They were really struggling to change a dandelion to even a forget-me-not. It took 6 months, even a year sometimes, to reprint those booklets. So often the numbers would be out of date, and that when you're grieving and you pick up the phone and you have a telephone number that is not correct can be absolutely devastating. You just need help. You need someone to hold your hand virtually or face-to-face at that point. And I found out from these teams that they would have loved an online database, something that was constantly kept up to date, because, as I said, all the disparity that we found across the country was really quite damaging. Because I even went to a bereavement manager once and I said about Widowed and Young, they'd never heard of it either. So it was just, there was a postcode lottery. We didn't know where to turn to get absolute best practice across the country. So we set up the website. We got very early feedback, very strong feedback. One of them was saying, help, I'm in Halifax and I lost my dad 40 years ago. I need to talk to someone now. Help, I'm in the Scottish Isles and my child died 2 years ago and there's no one here to support me. I need to meet others who understand and I'm desperate. Help, I'm in the Isle of Wight. My husband died 5 months ago and my doctor can't find help for me. There's nothing available in my area and I'm really struggling. And that, again, seemed to be the general consensus. Up and down the country, there were pockets of excellence, but there were also pockets of just lack of knowledge, lack of awareness, and certainly lack of one central resource that people could use. So back in 2016, we launched the Good Grief Trust. So it was a website with a few hundred charities back then. We now have over 1,000 charities, support services, helplines, groups under the one umbrella. As we call it, help and hope in one place. So the website, it's incredibly simple to navigate, and that has to be very key. So when you're bereaved, the Good Grief Trust is run by the bereaved for the bereaved. We all know what it feels in those very early days. You're in a fog. You can't even often get up and even make a cup of tea or have a shower. So you need to be able to access support that is right for you from day one, quickly and easily. So our website opens up. You can choose if you've lost a child, a partner, a parent, a sibling, a friend. There's support for the older generation, for young people. There's hope for the future. But that's just the start of it. There are pages of articles, of websites, of links, of helplines, of books. We have a YouTube channel. It's all under that one umbrella. So again, when you type in thegoodgrieftrust.org, the first thing that comes up is a search bar for the type of language that you speak. We have 104 languages, so immediately the whole website turns into something that is approachable for that person, no matter what faith, culture, language they are more familiar with, which is again incredibly important. To keep a hard copy up to date in another language is just not feasible. It's not cost effective and it won't work. So we want this online database, which is absolutely key now. So this is immediate signposting to tailored support services. The first thing that many people do when they visit the website is they look for something near them. So they type in their postcode and they choose the type of loss that they've had. If they know the charity they're looking for, they can put that in, and the region that they live. And immediately they will be given a list of support services, of charities, of groups near them and further afield, so that they can choose what is right for them. And what is really important as well is that they can go back to that, because we know that grief changes on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis. What you want on day one might not be what you want actually 6 months down the line, 6 years down the line. And we're there for day one and ongoing support. So it's a step-by-step guide. Another key page is what to do when someone dies. So that person, either the bereaved or the health professional, the doctor, the GP, the police officer, whoever it is who's supporting that person who's bereaved, can immediately go on that website and talk them through it. There are videos, and we know that videos work so much better, basically, than text when you're grieving. To listen, to absolutely connect with what is happening, and to talk you through very slowly is really, really important. So alongside the database, we knew it was absolutely key to have one very simple, very hopeful and friendly resource that's tangible, that you can have in your hand. So just to share a URL or to have a scrap of piece of paper that you can put a website or a telephone number on is often not enough. So we created this card, the condolence and signposting card, that sits along the database. It says, "We're so sorry for your loss. We're here to help you now." So we've recently updated this. We've got a QR code and we've got a space here for the health professional with the feedback from the NHS and those teams that we're working with across the country. They often just wrote around the card, because this card has been in existence now for 6 or 7 years, and they were writing just around the corners and at the front, "I'd looked after your dad, here's my telephone number. If you need me, here's my URL." So we've absolutely made it into a joint condolence and signposting card. So Julia Samuel, MBE, I'm sure many of you know, she's written countless books. She's a guru of the grief world, really, and she's founding patron of Child Bereavement UK. And she says, It isn't the circumstances of the death that will predict a positive or negative outcome. It is the support they get at the time and after the death. This is the key component to anybody finding a way to rebuild their life. And that's absolutely where the Good Grief Trust lies. This is one of our nurses based up in Liverpool, sitting with a patient or a relative, and they will talk them through how to use the card. And we'll show you later on, there's no point in just putting things in a bag, a leaflet, brochures, etc. That person needs to know how to use it and how to get that benefit very quickly and very efficiently. So the Good Grief Condolence and Signposting Card, as I said, it's a simple, cost-effective and comprehensive resource. So we supply it to NHS trusts, GPs, social healthcare providers, community service. We're with the police, there's the fire, ambulance services. It's available to pharmacies, care homes. These cards are in, health visitors and school nurses. HR departments, very, very important now. We're working with teams who are supporting their workforce, schools and universities, grassroots organisations and the prison service. And as we said, it has over 1,000 charities and support services. Very key now is the QR code, because that person who's supporting the bereaved relative, the friend, can scan it immediately, and that will show them where to go. So they're not going home with something they don't really understand. As I say, it offers a choice of tailored support. There's that space for the professionals. And what we're really championing is a consistent, standardised approach to signposting for the bereaved and also for those professionals. It reduces the need to overwhelm the bereaved with information, and key, it reduces that disparity in the provision and awareness around bereavement services. So this is the card. This is available, as I said, from this year. The previous card was donated by the Good Grief Trust. We've donated 250,000 cards over the years, and these are now being paid for by NHS Trust, by GP practices, and those people who are working with the bereaved. And we thought it's really important to have a removable insert as well. So this card acts as a condolence card that can sit on the mantelpiece. It has this help and hope and very friendly, hopeful image, but you can also remove the little insert and keep it with you in your pocket, in your purse, in your wallet, so you've always got access to that URL. And as I said, this personal note of condolence that we've now redesigned the card is really important from the feedback that we've been working with health professionals up and down the country. That personalised approach, when you personally have maybe looked after that person, if they've had a terminal diagnosis, or if you're working in end of life, but even for sudden death, it's so important to offer that one-to-one support. So during COVID, the cards were funded by the Department of Health and Social Care. In 2020, they funded 150,000 cards. We got them shipped over from the Suez Canal. We got them out to the NHS trusts, and we managed to fund enough for 3,000 GP practices. And the Minister for Bereavement at the time said, one of my highest priorities is making sure that families and friends who have lost loved ones have access to the support they need. I'm glad that the Good Grief Trust cards will help ensure that grieving families and friends are aware of the wide range of excellent bereavement support that is available to them if and when they need it. And we wanted to share now some of the messages and testimonials and feedback that we've had from the NHS and the ambassadors and GPs that we work with. So Fiona Murphy, MBE, pictured here, she's just recently retired actually. She was corporate director of nursing and at the Liverpool Foundation NHS Trust. I'm sure many of you know the SWAN model that she created and pioneered. And she says signposting to this charity is of the utmost importance. It is exceptionally valuable to use this card as part of our toolkit supported by our charitable funds. Please investigate how your trust can implement the use of the Good Grief card within your organisation. We supply this card across the UK and particularly work down on the Isle of Wight. And Shane Moody, Clinical Director of End of Life, said, I totally agree and support there being a cost to the cards you supply in order to make them sustainable. Every bereaved family that comes through my unit gets one or more, and everyone that comes to the bereavement centre at the hospital also gets one. And this includes all deaths that require the person to be brought to the hospital mortuary, i.e. sudden, traumatic and unexpected deaths, and expected community deaths, etc. So I'm hoping we're connecting people with the support they need. Shirehampton Health Centre said we made the decision to include the Good Grief Trust cards as part of our bereavement packs because it's a great resource and a simple tool to provide details of a single point of information for all. The website has translation options, and irrespective of the circumstances, the site has pages for various groups, practical guidance when someone has died, as well as different support available. And the insert card can also be kept discreetly in someone's purse or wallet. This is Jules Lewis, end-of-life facilitator for Shrewsbury and Telford, and she's one of our incredible clinical ambassadors. And she says, we put the Good Grief cards in our swan bags and bereavement packs to ensure bereaved families have access to help and hope and the support they need at the darkest of times. We've also put the cards in packs for bereaved staff, and many of these staff now follow the charity on socials, finding the messages on Facebook and Twitter helpful, giving them help and hope. Thank you for all you do. And we'll talk later about some of the initiatives that Jules has actually created within her trust. So she leads now putting together some bereavement cafes for her staff, because as we know, it's incredibly important to offer support for staff as well as for the bereaved. Dr. Catherine Mannix, palliative care consultant, says it's a fantastic idea to ensure that bereaved people are signposted towards reliable and trustworthy sources of support. And the Good Grief Trust website gathers both national and local services into an easy to follow directory. Simple, cost-effective, comprehensive by a GP after death, this card offers a way for a GP to send condolences and to know that they're also sending reliable support information. Dr. Nagat Arif is our lovely ambassador. She does a lot of work across BBC Breakfast and This Morning, and she says, I've sent condolence cards with the Good Grief cards with my patients. This signposting has prompted them to consider contacting someone for support for their grief. No one should have to grieve alone. I fully endorse that GP practices should add the Good Grief URL to their text facilities as another way of reaching the bereaved and supporting the mental health of our community. And again, that's another initiative that we're really keen to work on. The simplicity of maybe receiving a text like you would do for a doctor's appointment. If you're bereaved, you can find that very helpful as well. So any way that we can offer that support along the way and all those touch points is really important. Dr. Amir Khan is one of our ambassadors, and he works up in Bradford, and he also puts those cards into his condolence card. And he said the feedback was almost immediate. Patients who had said they felt lost now felt as though they knew where to go and who to speak with in regard to their feelings, and they felt better supported. And this has had a direct impact on their overall mental health, which in turn will have a positive impact on the work that we do in the community. So we're not just a directory, and we're not just a card. What I wanted to create with the Good Grief Trust was a community. I felt incredibly lost and alone in my grief, and we know that is something that people often feel, and particularly during COVID and post-COVID. So we have this huge community, really interactive, people supporting each other across social media, Twitter, X, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And the highest reach that we've had so far was a couple of years ago, and we had 13 million on Facebook, and this is completely organic. So we're incredibly proud of the community that we've created, which again is so important. So back in 2017, we approached government and we formed the first APPG on bereavement support. And we have an incredibly passionate and interactive group doing amazing work. Back in 2018, we launched the first Good Grief pop-up cafes, which was a huge success. Obviously, this was pre-COVID, but we went down to the Isle of Wight and we were in Waterloo Station, and this lovely British Transport Police woman came along, had a cup of tea, and it was the first time that she'd had a chance to talk about losing her sister. So we know that just offering a really familiar, very easy to talk to environment can often open up those very difficult conversations. I was very proud in 2018 to receive the Points of Light Award from the Prime Minister, and she said at the time, Theresa May, the Good Grief Trust is providing vital resources for people experiencing bereavement, offering comfort, practical support, and the knowledge that they're not alone. So post-COVID, we couldn't run these cafes, so we went online and we created targeted groups. So those for the LGBTQ community. We had cafes for parents who'd maybe lost their parents, who'd only just become a mother or a father. We had a general cafe that people used to pop into. And we have been running a Sunday moving forward cafe for the past, 3 years now, every single Sunday, which is absolutely amazing because people come and they share and they feel as though people understand, which we know is absolutely key. One of our other initiatives, which again we're very proud of, is National Grief Awareness Week. So we're now in our 6th year. We started this back in 2019. We've lit up St Paul's Cathedral with our branding every year, Blackpool Tower, County Hall, and many landmark buildings across the UK mark the final day of National Grief Awareness Week, which is December the 8th. So this runs between the 2nd and the 8th. And at 6 p.m, we light the country to raise awareness of the impact and loss on a national platform. And just to remember those people, but primarily to support the grieving and to raise awareness of the open conversations that we can have. And we run many events across that week. These are some of our posters over the years. Please do take a look on National Grief Awareness Week. These are really key, actually, that we put out a couple of years ago. Just because I'm smiling doesn't mean I'm not grieving. Say their name, I'm thinking about them anyway. There's no one face of grief, and there's no set length of time to grieve. This is acknowledging people's grief. We often feel, particularly when you're newly bereaved, that your grief is maybe not acknowledged. And the understanding across the sector is now growing, which is absolutely wonderful. And there's more awareness of the need to reach out to people and to let them know and to try and normalise the grief that they feel. National Grief Awareness Week 2021. Excuse me, just taking a sip. Oh, go back. We held at Scotland Yard. So we had a big double-decker bus. We drove it around London, again with our messaging. We worked very closely with the Met Police to put together a fantastic event in London. But as I say, this is national, so we hope that many people across the country feel supported. Last year at Christmas, we launched the Better Together Cafe initiative. And this has been something that has been a stepping stone to create new cafes now across the UK. We partnered with Hospice UK, with Marie Curie and To Wish, which is a wonderful charity in Wales. And we created cafes. Again, it's very, very simple. Put the kettle on, bring professionals together, first of all, so that professionals knew who else was working down the road, that we could support each other, find out more about those services that you offer in the community that we can share with the bereaved, but also obviously to bring the bereaved together and signpost them out to the services that they absolutely desperately need. And on the back of that, because of its success, we're now launching a new grief and bereavement cafe map under our umbrella. It'll be a second map that you can put your postcode in and immediately you can find your grief and bereavement cafe cafes that are nearby you. And as I said, Jules Lewis, she is our ambassador in Shrewsbury and Telford NHS Trust. She started cafes there for her bereaved staff, who are also looking after, obviously, patients and end-of-life care on the wards. We have our nurses up in Liverpool, run by Fiona Murphy up there at the NHS Foundation Trust. They've started 20 cafes out in the community, running on a monthly basis in the hotel. So those are professional bereavement nurses holding the hand of people in the community, which is incredible. We've got hospices who have partnered with churches and with community groups out in the regions, and they are also running bereavement cafes. So all these will be under our map and easily found by both professionals and also those people who are bereaved. This is one of our final campaigns on this presentation. It was last year and we launched Sit with Hope. So Sit with Hope is all about, again, trying to plug the gaps in the community. If you have received excellent bereavement support information, you know where to turn, that's absolutely brilliant. If you are in a place that perhaps is lacking in those resources, you might be out walking, you might feel incredibly lost in your own community. So we wanted to try and plug the gaps. We are very lucky to have some wonderful ambassadors and patrons. So one of our patrons is Dame Penelope Wilton, who was in a programme called Afterlife, which I'm sure many of you know, with Ricky Gervais. Her character sits on a bench in a cemetery and he's lost his wife and she's lost her husband. They laugh, they cry, but they connect. And that, again, is so key, to connect us all as human beings out in the community when maybe we feel a little bit lost and we're trying to find our way. So we have a plaque now, and it has help and hope in one place and a QR code. And these are now on benches across the UK. We launched it at the Royal Windsor Flower Show with Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Edinburgh. And we've now, as I say, got 800 plaques on benches in community gardens, in hospices, in hospital gardens, creating a lovely memorial space and somewhere quiet that people can sit and reflect, but also gently find their way forward. And what is so wonderful is that we've got many families who have pledged a plaque for their own family bench. And this means so much to us, because that means that those people will want to give forward, so pay forward. So anybody who's out in the community who might be using that bench will then be able to find the Good Grief Trust as well. And that is a real comfort to these bereaved families who are working with us. So we thank them so much. And as I say, many councils are now adopting this. And we have 2 on the terrace at the House of Commons, with huge thanks to, obviously, Sir Lindsay Hoyle here, the Speaker. So our final initiative that we've launched this year is a partnership with the Met Police. And this is really one of our key partnerships and collaboration this year. So we're working very closely to provide the Good Grief Trust condolence card to every family liaison officer across London. We've given 1,000 cards, they've invested in those, and they will be distributing them between 700 FLOs. So I've been working very closely with the Met Police, presenting and delivering introduction to the charity and talking more about this one particular resource. So let me just read this to you. This is some feedback from a detective sergeant who came along, and she said, "You recently came to Hendon Police Training School and gave an input to us regarding the charity and support around bereavement. As a police officer who lost my mum and stepmum within 2 weeks of each other in 2011, my world fell apart. And despite the strong character I consider myself to be, and reluctantly, when I found myself a year later unable to sleep, I approached the GP, who said it was delayed bereavement and offered me pills, which, like yourself, I declined. I was appalled that this was the only limit of support out there, and chose to find my own path to come out of it. Lucky for me, to where I am now. I wish I'd been able to achieve any ounce of what you've gone on to achieve as a result, and I wish this link to their charity had been there for me. I was not the only one present who your presentation resonated with and wish they'd known more about the link. As a supervisor, I now find myself dealing with supporting those who, like me, have or are going through bereavements, and finding that today there is as much the same support paths as there were in 2011. I consider myself fortunate to have had this input, and feel this could be a real benefit to so many officers out there who feel, probably as I did, that the limited options following a bereavement are still just counselling, pills, OH referrals, and a get on with it attitude. So we're now speaking very closely to her department, and I will be presenting to them at Holloway, actually, in North London. So this is something, again, that I've been presenting to those flows across London. And this is an account, or it's excerpts actually from an account by a bereavement nurse who is leading in Mid and South Essex, Karen Andrews. And she's asked us to relay this account, as she sadly had quite a negative experience with her flow. And she says, "On the night of the 28th of September 2013, I received the knock at the door, which every parent fears. I was asked to confirm my name, and if I had anyone with me, and if I was the parent of William Andrews. The immediate hours that followed are a complete blur, except I recall vomiting in the garden after I'd heard the words. Unfortunately, William died at the scene." She then goes on to say what would have made a better bereavement experience for my family. Number one, a family liaison officer with the right skill set to sit, listen, support my family, and to walk us through the daunting days, weeks, and months that followed. Not to be handed his blood-stained clothes in a clear plastic bag whilst sat at the dining table. It felt like I was being handed a bag of dirty washing. better resources, and somebody who knows what's in them. We were given a Break Charity resource folder, and every time I asked a question, I was told by the flow to look in the folder, as everything is in there. I was made to feel like a nuisance, and I would find myself starting conversations with, "Sorry, I know you're busy, but could you just answer this question for me?" In the end, I stopped asking questions, and we decided to navigate the journey ourselves as we felt we had become a burden. I often reflect on our family's grief journey and feel that had we received the right bereavement support by appropriately trained and experienced members of the police, then perhaps the complex bereavement issues which my family experienced may not have manifested. And that, we know, is absolutely the bottom line. It's that personalised approach from the beginning. She's a nurse, she's a palliative care bereavement nurse with huge experience, but she'd never lost a son. So I think that really is a very strong message to finish on.